Hello, everybody. We've already got 300 people online, so thank you so much. Welcome. It's fantastic to see you. My name is Catharine Hydon, and we'll start things officially in just a moment, but it's great that you're all here. We've got a couple of minutes left before we officially get started, so fantastic that you're all here. I can see you all flooding in, and thank you so much for everybody who is already introducing themselves in the chat. It's fantastic that you're doing that. You might also, because today is our focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, also share with us the traditional owners on whose country you are on. You might want to pause for a moment and tell us who they are. Introduce yourself, tell us your name, and also tell us your role. You might be working as a family daycare educator. Some of you might be in leadership roles. We'd love to hear that. We're going to have quite a number of people in the chat today, so it might be a little bit fast. I can see everybody's chat coming in really quickly, so you'll have to keep up with that conversation. But great to see we've got people from all over New South Wales, which is fantastic. And we also have some people from interstate, so welcome to you too. If you want to, as I said, take a little moment to introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what your role is, and also to take a little bit of a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners on whose country you work and play and the children learn. So we've just got one more minute or so before we get everybody in. And I know that some of you have had a very busy day working with children today, so thank you so much for making the time. If you have got a piece of paper handy, grab a pen before we get started. You might want to have a piece of paper ready to go to make some notes. And some of you might even have a cup of tea. That would be really good if you do, because that's a really good way of concentrating after a very busy day. So thank you very much and welcome everybody. Lots of waves from everybody, some love hearts to say hello, which is great. Some people from all over New South Wales there, which is terrific. I'm seeing all of the hellos coming in. Some of you might even have been gifted some of the language of your community as well. I know here in Victoria, where I'm joining you from, the word woman jekka has been gifted to the community here from the Aboriginal people locally. So it's a great way of saying welcome. It is 7 o'clock, everybody, so I am going to get started. We've got some more people who are coming in, so welcome to you. Thank you so much, everybody, for making the time to be here. I do appreciate that. It's a very busy day, and many of you have been working very hard all the way through today to support children and to also make sure that there's lots of really quality early childhood education and school hours education going on in your space. So welcome to everybody. I'm going to share my screen as we get going, and we have the lovely Ethan in the background here, and he's going to be here to support the conversations if we need some additional support, but it's fantastic that you're all here. So welcome everybody officially to Embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Perspectives in Family Daycare. This is PD in Your Pocket, and I know that many of you know this space really well, and I know that lots of you have been participating in the suite of opportunities that Family Daycare New South Wales has for you. And this is a free PD, so a really great, fantastic way for you to engage in professional learning. And this is such an important topic. We've got lots of different people who are joining us from all over thinking about what this might look like in family daycare context. We've got two great interviews in store for you today as well. So one of the things we just want to check in as we go to is that everyone's got their sound turned up, because there will be some videos that you can hear. But if you have any technical problems, if you can just put it in the chat, and Ethan will do his very best to support you. One of the tips sometimes is you go out and come back in, and you might be able to sort out some of your technical issues. As I said before, my name is Catharine Hydon, and I work as the director at Hydon Consulting, and I've had the absolutely good pleasure of joining you before in this context, so it's great to be once again in your company. Now, of course, many of you will know that you've also had delivered electronically the booklet that goes alongside this opportunity, so hopefully you've all had a chance to have a look at that. Some really great ideas in there, and it's also an opportunity to showcase some of this work. And as you know, PD in Your Pocket is funded by the New South Wales Regulatory Authority, the New South Wales Department of Education. Great that they are able to support want you to engage in these ideas. So you were sent this booklet as part of your registration, and it's also posted on the Facebook page. So if you miss this opportunity to connect it in that format, you'll be able to get it on the Facebook page. And we know there's quite a lot of chatter on the Facebook page, and lots of people share ideas after today also about some of the work that they're doing. And just a reminder that there'll be a survey after the session, because we really want to find out more information about what you experienced for today and also your suggestions moving forward. And there's also be an opportunity to get a certificate of participation, because I know those things are important to you as you think about your own professional learning. So make sure you check your mail, make sure you check your junk mail, because sometimes it goes into those spaces. So look for your certificate as a result of today. The other thing we want to do just before we do an important moment in all professional learning as we gather together our acknowledgement of country, which we will do just in a moment, I want to just tell you a little bit about some of the things you said in preparation for our opportunity today. And you gave us some feedback, which we're really grateful for, and it really helps us understand what you're thinking in this space. And we asked you a couple of questions, and this is what you said. How confident do you feel about incorporating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into your program? Lots of you said you were confident. So, congratulations. It's fantastic to hear that you are feeling a little bit confident about that. There were some of you, though, who said, I'm very confident in this space, but some of you said not very confident. So it's great to see there's a collection of different levels of confidence, but that's why you're here today, to build your confidence and help you feel like you can take further steps. But isn't it great to see that 18% of you said you are very confident in this space? Here's what else you said. Do you acknowledge country and the traditional owners in your service with the children? And lots of you said yes. So that's fantastic news, and that means that lots of you are doing that. In fact, in the chat, you might want to take a little moment to share what you do and how you acknowledge country, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go. And also, it's really fantastic to see that some of you are a bit unsure about that, and also that's why you're here today, to learn a little bit more about what that might look like. Here's what else you said. We asked you about, do you celebrate NAIDOC Week, and we'll talk a little bit about what NAIDOC Week might be. And look how many of you said yes. Lots of you said yes, and that's an important opportunity for you to celebrate. There's a few of you who said no, and maybe we should say not yet. So there's an opportunity for you to think a little bit about what that might look like as we move forward. And here's the last thing that we asked you about: how do you incorporate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into your program? And we talked about that. How often, do you do that? And lots of you are saying that you do it sometimes, which is fantastic. So you're sort of building your capacity over time. But look how many people said daily. So there's lots of people there. And also lots of you are doing that weekly as well. And a few of you are not quite there yet, but only a tiny number of people there. So great to see your feedback in that regard. The other thing that I think would be really important to say at this point is that I am not an Aboriginal person, but for me, this is a really important part of my work as an ally. And today, in conjunction with the team at New South Wales Family Daycare, but also with the Department of Education and their Aboriginal education team, we have worked to bring you ideas that are respectful and reflective of the context in New South Wales. If you are joining us from somewhere else, you might want to connect with your local organisation so that you can connect and make some contacts there. I would see my role as someone who supports conversations that happen locally and opens up a space. And I want to encourage us all to think of ourselves as people who are learners and people who walk alongside our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues. I will be sharing ideas with you that are things that I've learned about and that I'm committed to, and I encourage all of you to make connections and to continue to learn and grow in this space. So one of the things that, of course, we do when we connect in this space is to pause for a moment and acknowledge country. Now, an acknowledgement is a very important thing that the non-Indigenous community, the non-Aboriginal community can do to recognise that we are on Aboriginal land. And some of you may recognise this image. It's a very Sydney-orientated image. And it's important that we pause and we acknowledge that we are on Aboriginal land, always was and always will be. And I particularly here because I'm joining you from the Kulin Nation down in Melbourne. And it's important that we recognise that the land that we're on is a place where teaching and learning has taken place forever, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people all around Australia and the Aboriginal community in New South Wales have been raising children strong in their culture over many eons, and sometimes in challenging times, and that we acknowledge that this land was never ceded, and that we acknowledge that the work that we do every day is on the shoulders of pedagogical giants, people who've taught us how to look after country and how to be respectful in the spaces that we inhabit. And an acknowledgement of country is an important thing that we can all do to remember on whose country we are on and how we learn and grow in that space. And it's important that we now feature this in lots of different ways in our practice. And some of you are doing that with children. Lots of us are doing that in professional learning opportunities. And it's an opportunity to recognise what has gone before, but also to acknowledge the people, the elders who have helped us and supported us. And again, sometimes in difficult circumstances. And we also recognise that it's an expectation of our ongoing commitment to reconciliation. So this image at Barangaroo, some of you have been here as a space that has been reclaimed in recent times to tell a stronger story about the Aboriginal community who lived in this space and who continue to be a part of this community. It's a living culture that we are acknowledging. Now, for some of you, acknowledgement of country is something that you've been a part of, you've heard other people do, you might do this with children, which is fantastic. It is helpful sometimes, though, in acknowledgement of country to pause for a moment and think about what an acknowledgement actually is. And we recognise here that an acknowledgement is not a welcome. It is not my I don't have authority to welcome. I'm not an Aboriginal person whose land I'm on. I might belong to this space in a different type of way, but it is really important that we acknowledge that my role is acknowledgement, and if we need a welcome, then we ask our Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander local people to undertake a welcome. Some of you might have been a part of a welcome to country at an event of some description, but it's a particular specific role that the broader Australian community cannot do. The process of acknowledgement is something that we can do, each one of us, as we gather together in our professional lives and indeed our personal lives. So one of the things that I would invite you to do as you're thinking about acknowledgement of country, both with the children and as you gather as professionals, is to think about what you're acknowledging. What are you actually pausing to acknowledge? You're acknowledging country, you're acknowledging elders, you're acknowledging the impact of colonisation, you are perhaps acknowledging that this land was never ceded and that there are ongoing struggles. You're also acknowledging the unbroken connection that Aboriginal people have with country and their living culture that continues. And indeed, at this moment, we would want to acknowledge any of the Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who've particularly joined us online tonight. And you might want to put something in the chat. And we do know that there are many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues out there who call on us regularly to stand in allyship with them about what is taking place now, but also how we can continue to do better in the future. You also might want to think about acknowledgement in terms of why is it important? What does it do for the children and families that we work with? And I think for me, one of the things that's really important is that it is an act of recognition. It's an act of awareness. It's seeing people, it's hearing people. And those people who have had a chance to look at the Uluru Statement from the Heart will hear an invitation from our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters to hear us, to walk alongside us, to listen carefully. And it is also something that we want to think about in terms of overall mental health. To be seen and recognised and heard is an important way to feel a stronger sense of identity. And the last thing that I invite you to think about, and again, you might want to write some of these things down as you're wondering about these conversations is, or share something in the chat as we go, is what outcome are we trying to strengthen? What are we trying to progress here? And for those of you who are aware of the updated early years learning framework, you might think that, well, this is about making sure that every single child understands on whose country they learn and grow. And it's also making sure that children are contributing to a reconciled Australia now and into the future. It's also making sure that the outcomes for every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander child in wherever they are, including all of the family daycare homes that are out there, has a fantastic experience, and we address closing the gap as we continue our work every day. So these are reflective questions. They go to the National Quality Standard invitation to reflect in Quality Area 1. They also go to how we understand our obligations under the updated framework, which will be implemented in 2024. You have a familiarisation year ahead of you. It is also an opportunity for us to progress a conversation with our children and families about making it more than just a routine thing that we tick off, but something that involves children and families and is very meaningful to your particular context. And of course, one of the ways that you might do that is by reaching out to the communities that you're part of, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go. And I know that some of you have undertaken acknowledgements of country in your space and even developed your own local ones. You may have been a part of conversations more broadly that help you construct a meaningful acknowledgement of country. I know that there are many people who are undertaking this work, and I think we can really learn from them, but also it's something that we want to continue to think about and reflect on as we go. So we don't sort of set and forget. It's something that we want to keep coming back to and keep investigating and strengthening. You might want to use Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander words depending on where you are. You will, of course, seek some permissions about that depending on where you are. The language is very accessible. In some parts of Australia, there's apps that are available, and you can have a look at some of those resources in the booklet as well. We're pointing you in the direction of some of those places you can find out more information. And of course, doing this together is really helpful because we learn from each other as we go. So lots of really great opportunities there to think about acknowledgement of country as a start. And I know many of you are doing this, but some of you are just at the beginning of that process. So we'd like to encourage you to have a go and see where this takes you. Again, you might want to talk to the families about this and the children about how they might want to undertake that process. So the other thing that I want to do today is to invite you to think about how you can embed these ideas into future practice. So every time you meet together in a professional learning context, it's really helpful for us to use a way to think about what we learn. And this is a thinking tool that I've used lots of times with different educators, and it's a way to sort out your thoughts. So I wonder if you can, if you haven't already, get yourself a piece of paper and make 3 spaces on your piece of paper. It doesn't matter if it's the back of an envelope or a sticky note, whatever you've got available. And what I'd like to invite you to do is to think about 3 different ideas. And the first idea is to look out for the things that we talk about today that connect with your existing practice. So what are you already doing? And this is a really good way to celebrate your successes. What do you already know about? What knowledge do you already have? And the second thing I want you to look out for is ideas that stretch you, that take you a little bit further, extend your current thinking into something else. And then I want you to think about the ideas that really challenge you. And there'll be a couple of these things, and we're going to hear from different people who are going to share some thoughts, but also some different ideas that might challenge you to think differently about what you're doing, what you're wondering about, and maybe how you can find out more. And as a result of today, hopefully you'll get an idea that connects, an idea that extends, and an idea that challenges. And then the ideas that challenge and extend are things that you could put in quality improvement planning and think about how you might undertake that work into the future. So I'm going to ask you a couple of times as you go. Please feel free to share some of your challenges or extensions or connections as we go in the chat. And hello, everybody who is just joining us still online. Great to have you here. Please introduce yourself in the chat as we go. So what I'd also like to share with you as we get going through these ideas is that a little bit about what people are saying in this space. And the team at New South Wales Family Daycare have been really listening hard to what you've been saying around some of these ideas. And we know that embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in your family daycare settings around New South Wales can be sometimes challenging, and people sometimes get a bit overwhelmed by this. And there's lots of conversations and discussions around this in different settings, in different family daycare contexts. And we also know that the learning framework has really upped the ante here and asked you to think more about this. So it's really important that we sort of tap into some of the concerns that you have, but also think about what might be possible. So we know that family daycare educators are open to learning. You know, you're a learning bunch. You are people who are open to all sorts of interesting things. You've been leading the way about nature pedagogy over a long period of time, being out and about in community. So lots of the things that you are doing are leading practice. And I know that lots of you are saying we want to learn more, we want to do more in this space. We know that there's lots of you who've successfully managed to implement ideas, and we are starting to hear those really strongly, and we'll hear a couple of examples today. But we are also aware that some of you are concerned that you might be doing the wrong thing. And that worry about the wrong thing is really important for us to acknowledge. As I said, I'm not an Aboriginal person, so it will not be me who's saying that you're doing the wrong thing. But sometimes we try something, and then one of our Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander educator colleagues might say to us, well, do you have permission to use that language? What are you doing in that space? And I think that sometimes can make us feel a bit concerned. So what we really want to encourage you to do is to, if you do get feedback like that, is to take it as a gift and say, actually, it's really helpful for me to think about that. But really, we ultimately don't want you to stop trying. So stop trying, have a go. Don't stop trying, have a go. Make sure you're trying some different things. Asking if that's okay is all right. Sometimes some of you won't have huge amounts of opportunity to ask, but try something and then maybe test it out with some people, talk to your colleagues about it. But many of you are realizing that deep thinking and reflection is really important, and also taking the time to think about what you believe. Think about your own perspectives, your own understanding. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is starting with you first, so that we think about what we know and what we understand. But ultimately, the team at New South Wales Family Daycare and the Department of Education and across the sector, we're really keen for people to have a go, to try something, to learn, to be learners alongside the children that we work with, so that we can all grow in this space together. So today, more specifically, what we're going to do is 4 key things. We're going to talk a little bit about reconciliation, and then we're going to talk about embedding Aboriginal perspectives into our programs. We're going to have some practice conversations about what's expected, and then we're going to talk a little bit about taking action, because we're really keen, as a result of today, to invite you to think about what action you might take. As a result of being here today, what are you going to do? What are you going to try that will be about taking action and being positive in this space? And maybe it won't be completely perfect, but it'll be a way that you can take action to make sure that it is really clear that you are committed to ensuring that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives are incorporated throughout your program. So let's get cracking into the first idea. The first thing is to talk about reconciliation. And again, many of you might know what this looks like broadly, but we also want to think about what it looks like in family daycare. And for that, we probably have to go backwards. And for some of you, this might be new information, but for others of you, this is something that you are part of. In fact, some of you may have been here. So reconciliation really started with a significant walk across Sydney Harbour Bridge. There was actually lots of walks across different bridges across Australia, but this bridge walk was very powerful, and the work of reconciliation really got kick-started with a lot of Australians who felt we needed to do something differently. The injustices were too huge, and they continue to be something that very much alarms many Australians. And they got together and they walked across that bridge and they said, we want to do something different. And out of that, the reconciliation movement was born. And Reconciliation Australia is now the lead organisation for across the nation. And they and their team, and one of the teams we'll talk about is the Narragansett Education team, have a big ambition. Their big ambition is to enable all Australians to contribute to the reconciliation of the nation. And the reconciliation of the nation that we're talking about is the reconciliation between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the broader Australian community. And why do we need reconciliation is because of colonisation, because this land was never ceded. There was and the word invasion has been used. You've heard this in the general community. And many of you will also know this from your own lived experience if you think about the countries of origin that you've come from too. And I encourage you to have a look at some of the material on their reconciliation site, because it helps you understand the context of reconciliation. So what is reconciliation? Reconciliation is at its heart the strengthening of the relationship. It is understanding the past in a truth-telling way. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we go, but it's about strengthening the relationship between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the broader Australian community for the benefit of all Australians. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, it's a recognition of the colonised history, the devastating land dispossession, the violence and the racism. Some of that racism continues today, that an over half a century of significant steps towards reconciliation have been taken, but there is more work to be done. And it's an ongoing commitment so that we all make, particularly the broader Australian community, to the same life chances for all Australians, for all of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and particularly our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, that their life expectancy, their hopes and dreams can come to fruition like any other child. In early childhood education, reconciliation is about strengthening the relationship between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and their families and the broader Australian community of children and their families. So that connection and relationship where we're very good at this. We're good at bringing people together in our early childhood education and care context. If you haven't checked out this website, I really encourage you to have a look. Lots of material available there. And I think in that sense, if we say we don't know, we haven't looked hard enough. So we need to look at some of these places and find out different information. And some of you are going to be part of organisations locally that have done really fantastic work in this regard. But if you're wondering how to get more information, this is a fantastic place to start so that you can get this information. And one of the things that Reconciliation Australia has done is to define the 5 dimensions of reconciliation. And when you look at these immediately, you might think, well, what have they got to do with early childhood education? And I think it's important that we start to contextualise these and say, well, what can we do? And this is about Australians understanding and valuing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. It's about the way we think about the goals that are associated with some of these ideas, and then the actions that we can take. And this helps us to think about our work in early childhood education. Of course, it has to be age appropriate. It's very important that we do this, and also very important that we start to talk to families about some of the things that we're doing before we start. So if you're going to introduce some of these ideas in your family daycare setting, it will be really important for us to talk to families about some of this work. So let's have a look at what these 5 dimensions, race relations, equality and equity, unity, institutional integrity, historical acceptance look like in early childhood. And let's sort of go into this space. So the whole idea of race relations really is the connection between the family daycare context and the broader community. So it's finding ways that we can connect with the Aboriginal community locally. And this might be opportunities to join in local events and local ways of celebrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, but it might also be engaging with some of the more difficult conversations locally about how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are faring in the community. Now, we know that there's an important day that's just been celebrated at the beginning of August, National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children's Day. There might be an event in your local area that you can join in. It's about getting to know people. The equality and equity space is about outcomes for children. So we want to make sure that there are outcomes for children, particularly our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, that they're getting very good life chances in our everyday early childhood education and care practice in family daycare. Institutional integrity for us is about the organisations that run family daycare, your approved providers, the organisations, and you together with your colleagues think about how you build integrity as an organisation. And that might be about developing a reconciliation action plan or a Narragawnawali plan. We'll talk a little bit about that. And again, you might want to go straight to Narragawnawali and find out a little bit more information about what does it look like in family daycare, and also in early childhood education. Unity, the idea of unity is raising children who have a knowledge about and respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and history and language, and who feel proud about that and who know some things and share them with many other people. We all know family daycare children who've come out of family daycare homes and straight into school, and they know lots of things, and they say to their teachers in school, we already know the flag, and why isn't the flag flying in our school? So lots of different opportunities for children to feel proud and knowledgeable about that. The other one that is a bit of a tricky one at times, but we can use some great resources to help tell the story here, is the notion of historical acceptance. And this is about incorporating truth-telling as appropriate into the curriculum decisions that we make. And one of the thing that's on the image that you can see on your screen here is the Welcome to Country story that is, and actually it's a Melbourne-based story, so you might have other local ones that are produced in your context or more nationally focused conversations that talks about the story of the Wurundjeri people in the context of the Kulin Nation down here in Victoria. There are lots of stories that tell the truth about who was here before. You also need to be careful about how we do that in an age-appropriate way with children, but there is a really strong sense of fairness. You will know this from children. They will have a strong sense of fairness about what is right and just, and they will be able to join in. You know them well, so you'll be able to think about what might be appropriate in your context. Again, it would be really important for you to talk to families about this as you progress. It doesn't mean to say that you can't tell the truth about what might have happened in your particular community, about families being displaced. But again, you will need to do that in consultation with local communities, but also by talking to families and thinking about what might be appropriate for your children. Storytelling is such a really good way of doing that in terms of using the available literature that you can access. And of course, your local librarian will be able to help you with some of those materials because we now have a significant amount of literature available to us. So, of course, reconciliation, the reconciliation agenda, the whole progress that's been happening in this week, it gives us opportunities to come together as a nation. And one of those is National Reconciliation Week. And I know that many of you have been part of this alongside many other opportunities. So this happens in a particular time each year, the 27th of May to the 3rd of June. These dates commemorate two significant milestones in the reconciliation journey: the successful 1967 referendum in the High Court in the referendum, and the High Court Mabo decision, respectively. Now, if you don't know what those two ones are, you might actually have a look. 1967 referendum about including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the census, and the High Court decision around terra nullius, about whether there were people here before a white colonisation. So look up those two things. And again, the Reconciliation website, Reconciliation Australia website, has a great deal of information on there. They're two important days that sort of capture reconciliation, and it's a way of helping that to stay in people's hearts and minds, and for people to take particular action. It's a powerful opportunity for family daycare educators to progress reconciliation in their work. It's a way of kickstarting it, if you like, and you might want to plan for that. I know it's a long way away next year, but sometimes it's good to plan in advance. And this might mean that you reach out to your local community. You might do something together with your other fellow family daycare educators. You might join an event in your local community and think about what that might look like. There are lots of events planned, so make sure you check out that website and check out how you can be involved. I know that lots of family daycare educators are thinking about how they might be involved, but plan in advance. Don't leave it to the last minute, and think about how you might get involved. And can I also have a big shout out to New South Wales Family Daycare for their commitment to reconciliation. If you want to know more about what that looks like, please check out the New South Wales Family Daycare Association's really fantastic description of their commitment to reconciliation. This is where you can find some information that might help you. One of you might be an approved provider joining us today and thinking, actually, we need to think about doing some work in this space. And some of these words really capture, I think, the commitment that is being made. So again, reach out to New South Wales Family Daycare. If you're not a member, make sure you check out that and see what work is happening here, because together we can really make a difference in this space and learn from each other. And it's a testament to how many people who are committed to coming on tonight. We've got lots of people who are joining us that we know this is important to you and something that we want to progress in this regard. And to progress our conversation, it is important that we make sure we hear from key Aboriginal people in the local community, in the Sydney community. And we are absolutely honoured in our first interview to share with you today, an interview with Ron Timbery. Ron is a senior policy officer. He's in the cultural safety team at the Department of Education. He works in the early childhood education space, and he's been there for a little while. He's a committed educator, and I had the absolute good fortune of interviewing him to hear his perspective on how we might think about reconciliation and why it's important in this space. So I invite you to think about your own commitment, and you might also, as we hear Ron talking, you might want to think about how you might want to progress a conversation around what that might look like. So I'm going to share my video now and share that a fantastic conversation with Ron. So I welcome that opportunity and hope you enjoy the conversation with Ron. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first interview for this webinar focusing on embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into family daycare practice. And for this interview, I'm very pleased to be welcoming Ron Timbery, who is the Senior Policy Officer in the Cultural Safety Team, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about that as we progress in the Department of Education for New South Wales. And before I welcome you officially, Ron, and get you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the country that you're on, I want to also acknowledge that I'm here on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi people up in Queensland. It's a fantastic place to be. So, Ron, perhaps we can start by you telling us a little bit about where you are and your role.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. My name's Ron Timbery. I'm an Aboriginal man from the La Perouse Aboriginal community. Lapa, as we call it, is located on the northern shores of Botany Bay, about 15 kilometres south of Sydney City, one of the communities of first contact. The community's still there today. We're a very resilient community. All of Sydney has grown around us, but we still remain on our traditional lands. My clan is the Bidjigal clan, and we're a part of the Dharawal Nation or the Dharawal language group. I work in the cultural safety team, as we mentioned, and the cultural safety team is part of the regulatory authority. We're an Aboriginal team, first of its kind, and created to develop and create the cultural safety framework for the early childhood sector, and really pleased to be here today.
Well, we look forward to hearing a bit more about that work that you've been doing, because indeed it is a first of its kind and something that our family daycare educators who are tuning in today can actually be a part of. And I really encourage people to have a bit of a look at that, but I will talk a little bit about that as we progress. Right at the beginning of this conversation, perhaps we can focus our attention on how important it is to incorporate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into our family daycare programs. As, of course, you know, and lots of our educators who are tuning in today know, that it's a really important expectation now in terms of the way we undertake our work. But maybe from your perspective, Ron, and just to hear from you as an Aboriginal man in New South Wales about why it's so important to incorporate these ideas and embed these ideas into our practice.
Yeah, absolutely, Catherine. I'm new to early childhood, only been in the sector about 14 months, but I've been in Aboriginal affairs a long time. But for me, I think it's really important because I think children need to see themselves their families and their communities in what they're experiencing, what they're learning in early childcare services. Sadly, or not sadly, but the situation is that a lot of the early childcare sector now has a Western orientation, and there's not a lot of Aboriginal content in the sector. That's becoming it's becoming more and more high profile now, or more and more raised more often. It's in the early childcare national law under the guiding principles. It's also in the early years learning frameworks. It's Aboriginal content is really important because Aboriginal kids need to see themselves. I can talk from experience because when I was a kid, I didn't see much of myself in what I was learning. I learned about Captain Cook, and I learned about Governor Macquarie. I even learned about the bushranger Ned Kelly, but I didn't learn about Aboriginal men and women and Aboriginal communities and what they learned. So Aboriginal people, we sometimes say we walk in two worlds, and I think we do. I think it's very apt. So it is really important to have more Aboriginal content, not only for Aboriginal kids, for them to see themselves and for them to develop their own identities, but also for all Australian kids. There's a gap. There's definitely a gap. It's not it's a deficit sort of word, but I think we all need to, contribute to closing that gap. And, early childcare services and family daycare is a great place to start.
Absolutely. And you talk about that idea of children growing up strong and proud, and that other children around them have a very strong sense of it. And there will be people who are joining us, Ron, who say, I didn't get taught that stuff either. And I think one of the big things that we need to continue to think about, and we'll talk a bit about that as we progress, is actually being a bit proactive and learning more yourself if you feel like you don't know. And there's great places to go, including all the amazing work that you've been doing as well. I think one of the things that sometimes happens in family daycare and in early childhood education across the board is that we sometimes do some work around engaging with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in our programs. And I think particularly here we would want to encourage people to think about what their local Aboriginal perspectives are, wherever they are around New South Wales, to, do it 1 week. You do it in sort of NAIDOC week or something like that. But I think increasingly we're trying to say maybe think about how you can do it woven all the way through the teaching and learning that you would do every day. Can you share a little bit of thoughts about how we might think about it in a more holistic way, not just a once off?
I think the NAIDOC and things like that are a great place to start. But they do seem one off and sometimes a bit tokenistic, from the Aboriginal perspective. But that's okay. Making a start is the most important thing. And it really depends where you're at. Where your service is at, because I think, that gap that I talked about before and closing that gap, it's really for us all to be open to a learning journey. Learning more about Aboriginal people and communities and culture, sharing our perspectives, respecting our perspectives, and being vulnerable, because no one knows everything. We need to just and not one is better than the other. We need to just to connect. We need to start talking and listening. Listening is really important. Aboriginal people sometimes feel like they're not listened to. Government has contributed a lot to that. But that's the place to start in conversations, and it might be, the journey, just taking little steps on top of NAIDOC. You might invite Aboriginal parents to come in to the centre, taking little steps just to enable that conversation to start talking, because we'll learn from our interaction and those conversations. And the more we learn, the more comfortable we'll feel together and in learning and interacting and working with one another. And, like I said before, I think, I sometimes feel that, I thought that, a lot of Australians don't know much about the Aboriginal history, and that's a bit sad. We've got the oldest living culture in the world, and it's sad that a lot of Australians don't know a lot about that. So we've got to start somewhere, and take little steps, and not be afraid to, if we don't know a lot, or not be afraid of offending people. If we go in with the right intention, we're in a good place.
Yeah. I think it's a really important message, isn't it, Ron, to say it's now our obligation, our responsibility, our ethical obligation as professionals working in this space to act, not to have ignorance as an excuse, but to take a step. And as you say, it can be a little tiny step. And one of the great things too now is that there's so many resources out there, including the work that you're doing at the department to support that cultural safety idea. So there's lots of different possibilities, and this webinar is an opportunity to open that door, I think, for lots of educators. It also reminds me that there are some educators doing a great job too. They're really working hard. They're thinking about it over a long period of time, and I think you've reminded us it's important to keep stretching ourselves and learning more, and Ron would also incorporate us a bit about truth telling, and learning about what is the truth of our history and our lived experience now. So is that something that we should continue to think about? How do we learn more and grow more and talk about the truth?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. There are educators are doing an amazing job. I've been to the centres that I've been to. They're undervalued in society. The work that they do with children, is amazing, and through the work that we've done with the cultural safety framework, we know there's a lot of goodwill in the sector to about incorporating more Aboriginal content into the daily routines, that happen within services. We know that goodwill is there. There's some amazing people. You use the word stretched. There is a little bit, more people coming into the sector and more workers. That's, that's an area that's it's a bit of a frustration for the sector. But like I said, their educators are undervalued, I think, and for the work that they do. But I don't like to think of incorporating Aboriginal content as being stretched. I'd really like it to, as I said, start small, but start to do things regularly. Whether it's an acknowledgement of country, finding out about your local area, having, some Aboriginal elders come in once a month and do storytelling with the kids, or, something like that, just and to slowly build it up and build it into a regular practice. I think that's really important. There is going to be part of that conversation and that connectedness. There's going to be some uncomfortable moments, because there are some things that, that weren't that good that happened in our history. But we're growing as a nation, and and we're thinking, about our children and the future generations. So, learning more about Aboriginal culture, accepting what's happened and respecting what's happened, and giving them an opportunity to learn more is the most important thing. I think that's, all Australian kids will benefit from, from the connectiveness
Yeah.
that we endeavour and we strive for now, it'll be better for future generations.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully we raise children across the board in family daycare settings who feel like they know more. They feel proud of the country that they're growing up on. And, we hear children all the time talking to their parents saying, yeah, we know whose country this is, and we know what the flags mean. So this sort of confidence with young children is a really amazing contribution that we make, as you say, for the here and now, but into the future. And maybe it's great. It's a good timing to talk about the work you're doing with the cultural safety framework, because, as you say, it's really innovative work, and it's something that I know many people have talked about. It's great that there's work happening in New South Wales, and family daycare educators can be a part of that. Can you tell us a little bit about what that work is and how our family daycare educators can be a part of it into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. You use the word confidence in younger children, and isn't it fantastic to see?
Oh, amazing.
When the kids,
when
you see that flowing through them, and, I think that's one of the, if we get it right with the cultural safety framework, that's one of the things that we'll see more of.
Yeah, great.
In our kids, because I think it was the vision, like the framework that we're developing. It's part of the department's early childhood education and care, Aboriginal children's early childhood education and care strategy. And the vision is for all Aboriginal children to be, just a minute, where is it? I think it's to be, to give them a great start to lifelong learning.
Great.
And for their culture to be supported and nurtured by early childhood services. So that's one of the things, and that's why it's so important. If we can introduce more Aboriginal culture and knowledge and raise the awareness and knowledge of children and ourselves, those kids, Aboriginal kids, will benefit. Yep. They're the primary beneficiaries, because they will see their culture, they will see their people, in what they're learning each and every day. They won't be absent from that picture, so they're the first and foremost beneficiaries. But other children will learn as well, and those gaps that I mentioned before will be less. Because an Aboriginal child that doesn't see their place in what they're learning every day, by the time they leave that service, or some Aboriginal children aren't accessing early childhood services because they feel their culture and their is not supported. So they feel that what they're teaching the kids at home about their culture and their identity and isn't reflected in what they're learning in early childhood services. So that's really important. But through the framework, if we can change that and make some Aboriginal cultural practices and a daily part of what happens in an early childhood service, then they'll see themselves, and we'll see each other, and we'll be more comfortable in that space, and that confidence will grow, So for all those children, and look out then, because nurturing that culture and that identity, at such a young age, there's so much potential in all our children. It's just a really good thing. It's long overdue, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our family daycare educators out there have got the potential. Some of them are doing it right now, but others are just taking those steps to be able to send a very powerful message, as you say, to the community more broadly, that this is a place you feel welcome. You can feel welcome here. We see you, we hear you, and we want to learn together. And I think the potential of that is really high. And I guess giving a framework to that is going to help people make those decisions in ways that are respectful and authentic. And really that framework is also going to help people build their own confidence too about how they're making those decisions, because it's been created in such a collaborative way. And I wanted to remind people that they can access some material online about that. They can find out all about it. I've had a look at some of the recordings about some of their consultations, and they've been really powerful, and they help you as a non-Indigenous person to learn more about what's going on in New South Wales, which is really exciting. So people can be a part of it in now and into the future, Ron. They can just tap into what's happening by looking at the website.
Yeah, so the stage we're at, there's our website, and the best way to search is to enter on Google Cultural Safety Framework,
right? And
then look for it'll come up on the listing.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a couple of webinars that we've done, talking to the sector about the framework. We've got a little bit of a history of what's happened so far, and where we are now is we've got a draft
mm-hmm.
of a framework that still needs some work,
mm-hmm.
but we think that we'll be able to share the framework
mm-hmm.
with the sector towards the end of this year.
Correct.
Which is going to be really exciting when we go out and talk to services and present the framework and get their ideas and their thoughts and their responses and comments. So, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
But very exciting towards the latter stages of this year to be going out to the sector and sharing the framework and talking to them about it and seeing where each service is at, because we're all, like you said, some are already doing lots of great stuff, and that's really great to see. Some maybe not so,
mm-hmm.
But that's also great.
It's an opportunity, isn't it, Ron, for people to go, okay, now I'm feeling some inspiration and I'll get some ideas. Now I can start.
Yeah, and the framework will give people guidance on how to make a start, and there'll also be further down the track tools to support services in guiding them and enhancing their capacity to create more culturally safe spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's really exciting,
mm-hmm.
and really looking forward to that time and to engaging more with the sector about the cultural safety framework.
And I think there's your invitation, everybody, is to keep track of what's going on and keep checking in and looking forward to when that is more formally released. And I think too, Ron, it's about people feeling that they can ask questions and talk to each other as a team, because some of those things are about just learning together and saying, we're getting a bit of inspiration from a colleague who might be doing something a little bit different. And the nature of family daycare is that people work from their homes. So it's great sometimes to meet together with your family daycare colleagues, work with your approved provider, your coordination team, to come together and talk a little bit about what they're doing and maybe have a think about some of the material that is coming through from the Cultural Safety Framework website and look at that together as they move forward. So very exciting times in New South Wales to have this opportunity, and great that family daycare can be involved. One last question for you, Ron. One of the things that often is important, and we talk a lot about it in early childhood education, is the importance of building relationships. And I think in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives space, and particularly in our focus around Aboriginal perspectives in New South Wales, building relationships with our local Aboriginal communities is really important. So if you're a beginning educator and you're thinking, I wonder how I do that, should I just rock up at something? Should I just ring somebody? If you got some advice for some of our educators who perhaps are at the beginning of that process and want to start a relationship with local community, but are not quite sure where to start, can you give us a sense of what to do in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. relationships is really, really important. It sort of underpins Aboriginal communities. It's keeps everything together, you know. So it is very important aspect. And in 2020, something that came out of a report that the department did was that Aboriginal parents, Aboriginal families felt they didn't belong in, you know, that they didn't have a sense of belonging with their early childcare service. So this is a really important first step. You know, if you have Aboriginal children and parents in your service, you know, have a chat with them. You know, try to build a relationship. Take your time with it. You know, don't sort of seem over enthusiastic, because a lot of Aboriginal parents already are under, you know, with work and with community obligations and things like that. There's something we call cultural load. That sort of is that a lot of Aboriginal people feel through work or through their community obligations. So sometimes when you reach out, you know, it might not be straight away coming back. You know, you might have to try a couple of times. You know, invite those parents for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, you know, in a bit of a more relaxed setting, or something like that. But you know, to start off, you know, and try and make it a regular thing, maybe once a month or something like that, to build that relationship, because there is still an element of lack of trust as well between, you know, with Aboriginal people and Aboriginal communities about government and you know, early childhood services as well. So it's important to gain trust first, and then, you know, if you can do that, well then, you know, you've got a great platform to begin with. But you know, there's also relationships that you could build with. Maybe if you're a mainstream or a non-Aboriginal service, you might have an Aboriginal service close by that might reach out to them, or an Aboriginal community organisation. You know, you might reach out to them for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. You know, just to begin conversations. Let them know what you're doing and what your plans are, and they might be able to you know, put you in touch with someone that can help in maybe providing guidance with building more Aboriginal cultural practices into your service. They might also be a little bit resistant too, because of that cultural load, or you know, not wanting any or, you know, just feeling overwhelmed. You know, so so that's something to be a little bit mindful of. But you know, the goodwill in the sector, it's a great opportunity as well. And you know, and I think once, you know, if you can explain the reasons behind your interest and you know, and what you want to do at your service with, you know, the Aboriginal kids, or just all of the kids, you know, about learning more about Aboriginal culture and having more Aboriginal content in your service, well then, you know, the Aboriginal people and Aboriginal community will, you know, they'll see the benefit straight away, you know, and it's something that we've sort of been pining for many, many years, you know. Been in the public service a long time. Maybe that's coming from that experience, but it's, you know, if once you let that be known and you're seeking guidance and support and, you know, from the community, I think, you know, that, you know, that will open the door definitely.
And I love the reminder that you give us to go slowly and gently and authentically. And I hear from educators out there and from the broader Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community across Australia is we have to continue to show up and be part of the what's happening in community. And there might be events and important things that are going on in your community that you can come along to. And it shows that you're, as you say, you're interested and you keep being there, and then you get to know people, and that respect is born from that willingness to be a part of some of those conversations locally. And I think, as you say, it benefits all children, but very particularly for our conversation today, the Aboriginal children and the Torres Strait Islander children who might be in the communities where our family daycare educators are practicing. So, Ron, one piece of advice moving forward. I think you've already told us the really important one about going, trying something. Have you got another piece of advice for our family daycare educators out there who might be taking a first step?
Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, because I know that can hold people back. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing or offending someone. And that might happen.
Yeah.
But we all make mistakes. And I think that's going to be part of it. Those awkward moments, maybe. But I think if we go in with the right intent, and the right meaning and purpose, and from the heart, we're really in a good place.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ron. It's been an absolute privilege to talk with you about these really important ideas, something that is now, as you say, central to the way we enact our early childhood education and care practice under the national law, but also within the updated early years learning framework. And I think on behalf of all of the family daycare educators out there, I think we commit ourselves to do better and to be more inclusive and to work together for a reconciled Australia. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity, Catherine.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you so much for being a part of that conversation and listening in. We've got over 1,000 of you online, which is just such a glorious thing to have so many of you hanging in there after a very long day's work. And I loved that conversation with Ron myself. It was such an honour to be a part of that. And I hope that invitation for you is something that you can continue to be a part of, and check out all of those things that Ron suggested, but importantly, that cultural framework, and we'll have a bit of a look at that as we keep going. So now we're going to go into embedding Aboriginal perspectives in family daycare, and I think this is where we start to think about the ways in which we can start to act. And the first part of that really is about engaging with the updated early years learning framework. I know many of you are already in that space, so thank you for those of you who started to look there. As you familiarise yourself with this document, you'll see that there's a significant shift from cultural competency to cultural responsiveness. And this is a really important one as we're starting to embed practice. And you'll see here that the ideas of listening and learning and respecting and acting are part of what we mean by cultural competency. And you heard Ron talk about exactly those things. And in just a moment, we'll hear Tracey talk a little bit about what that looks like in practice every day. But it's an important idea about thinking about who we are and the way we celebrate and understand the benefits of diversity, and honour particularly the stories of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander First Nations people in Australia. So something to hold on to and reference as you're preparing to take action in this space. And I just want to remind you about the cultural safety framework that Ron talked about. Here are some details about that. I really want to encourage you to be part of it and think about how you might understand it. You'll see that there's the phases that are occurring at the moment. There's a development and implementation phase to come, but we're right in the middle of that process, and there's some fantastic resources you can tap into, and this is what they look like. So check out the webinars and check out the consultation paper that Snake put together, a final report at the end of last year that helps us to think about what that might look like for New South Wales. And as Ron said, I think there's lots of opportunities to see what that might look like across the nation. So I'm really excited to see that. But the introduction webinars give you a really good sense of what work is being done in that space. So I encourage you to have a look at that. And that's a real way to enact your cultural competency as you shift to cultural responsiveness in this space. The other thing that we probably need to think about as we're starting to embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, and Aboriginal perspectives, particularly because you're in New South Wales, local perspectives, is to think about what it means to be embedded. And you'll hear Tracey in our interview talk a little bit about this, but the notion of embedding Aboriginal perspectives in family daycare is when we make decisions that move us into a space where it's ongoing practice, not just a one-off, not just bolted on, but something that we do all of the time, something that's part of our everyday decisions. And it's absolutely fine to start at a place where you think you might be a little bit token. You're just doing something in a week. So start there, right? Start there, and then move on to something that helps you to embed them throughout the program. So lots of different opportunities for you to think about how they might be part of it. I've just got a couple of things to show you, some images and some resources. This looks like an embedded approach to me. It's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander materials and resources that you might have gathered locally that are part of the everyday things that you're presenting to children. And there's lots of resources and equipment out there that you can buy or borrow and perhaps collect from your local community. And I know that many of you are very good at this, collecting local resources. And also it might be a conversation to have with your colleagues in the family daycare service more broadly, to say maybe we build a collection and we can borrow some of those resources. So dolls and some artifacts from your local community. I know a couple of family daycare educators who use with permission, and they've brought them locally from local providers, billums that are part of a place where babies are in those beautiful billums that help children to be, pretend play. It's a really fantastic way of incorporating some of those things into their work. So you know what's appropriate in your context. If you're not sure, again, we need to reach out, like Ron suggested, and find out what resources and materials we can access in our local communities. And of course, literature. There's amazing literature out there, and this is just one place you can find literature. Magabala Books is a leading Indigenous publisher. And again, if you go to your local library, they'll be able to point you in direction of borrowing resources and borrowing beautiful children's books that are now broadly published. So you might want to build your own collection, or indeed borrow them from your local library. Your local librarian will help you in this regard. A great way to introduce really powerful stories to children about some of the things that we know have occurred in the past, but also what we imagine to be a more reconciled future, but also some books that really help children to understand their own perspectives and their own identity as well. So, of course, many family daycare educators are interested in setting up learning spaces, and we know that there's some fantastic examples. In fact, check out the Facebook page. There's lots of different things there that people have, examples of practice, and you might want to share some of yours. And we know that this is also a place to inspire children to think about different ways of knowing and being. So lots of things bought locally, resourced locally. You might want to think about what they look like, particularly in your area. And that's a really important part of collecting resources, setting up learning experiences that help children to learn about local symbols, local animals, local stories, local parts of the natural community, local words, if you have permission to use those, and ideas that might be happening in contemporary Aboriginal cultural expression, including artwork and a whole range of music that is out there as well. So lots of the arts is a fantastic place to begin sharing ideas with children. The other thing, of course, is that we want to increasingly encourage you to set up imaginative play spaces using natural and recycled materials. So some of these give you an indication of some of the spaces that have been set up in family daycare contexts. And again, we really encourage you to share some of your own examples with each other. The other one, of course, is to use the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags alongside the Australian flag, something we know that's increasingly part of lots of early childhood education and care contexts. Feel free to reach out to your local member of parliament, because there's lots of opportunities to resource family daycare spaces. with flags that can be issued via your local member of parliament, your federal member of parliament. You might want to make a visit to your federal member of parliament and talk about the flags. I know many early childhood services have got the flags that way. I know some of you have got small versions that you put at the sign-in table, but it might also be a way to explore these ideas with children about the importance of these flags in our cultural understanding. So lots of children I know are really on top of that. They have a very strong connection. And of course, being out on country is a really important way for us to engage in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, and learning where the country is and what the name of the country is that you're going to, and increasingly thinking about the use of language, again, if you have permission to use that, to think about the words that we can use to describe some of the spaces that we go to. I know many of you are out and about on country on a regular basis. We also want to encourage you to participate in NAIDOC Week as much as you possibly can. Lots of different information is issued to the Australian community about NAIDOC Week. There hopefully will be celebrations in your local community. National NAIDOC Week is an opportunity for a celebration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, and it is very important for us that there's opportunities for children to also participate. And each year there is a theme, and this year's theme was For Our Elders. And you would have seen banners like this out there that give lots of us opportunities to particularly acknowledge a component of Aboriginal culture and Torres Strait Islander culture within our community. And in fact, lots of family daycare educators have joined in. And this is some great examples from Renata's family daycare. Thank you very much, Renata, for sharing these images with us. We have permission to use these images that gives a recognition of children participating in a local NAIDOC Week celebration. And I know that many of you have potentially have thought about joining in, or potentially did join in last year's, but look out for what that celebration might look like. Join NAIDOC Week celebration social media platforms, and look out for the work around that in your local for your local government community, or indeed invite your family daycare service as a whole to look out for that and plan for participation about NAIDOC Week into the future. Another important way for you to think about this work, of course, is to engage in 8 ways. And I know that many of you might have engaged with this. You might have studied this in your qualifications. And 8 ways is a particularly powerful piece of work which has been developed in New South Wales that I particularly draw your attention to. And you can see the website there that you can have a look at. 8 ways is something that grew out of particular ethic, a way of working around cultural awareness and cultural responsiveness. And it's about ways that children know and understand the world in which they live. And the 8 ways is a point of entry into knowing in a different way. And we haven't got time to talk about all of those elements here. And importantly, it's good to go back to the source of this to find out all of the details about this particular perspective. And I would encourage family daycare educators to think about the ways that they can use this authentically within the context of your family daycare service. The good thing about these is, of course, is that they are developed in New South Wales and through the Education Department. And again, something that might be particularly relevant to your setting. So I encourage you to go and have a look at the 8 ways material, because again, that might be a really powerful way for you to introduce to children a particular perspective, an Aboriginal or Torres Strait, and particularly in this context, an Aboriginal way of knowing and being that helps to progress children's thinking. So we're now going to talk a bit more about practice expectations as we lead into our second interview. And I wanted to particularly point out to you that the expectations now around including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives are strengthened, but they also have been part of our conversation for some time. They start with the guiding principles of the National Quality Framework. And you can see here that Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures are valued is an important guiding principle in the National Quality Framework. So right from the get-go, we're asked to pay attention to this space and to think about how we might use that. It's underpinned underpinned this commitment by a commitment to closing the gap, which I've talked a little bit about, and we heard Ron talk about how we can acknowledge Australia's great cultural diversity and, of course, the amazing story from our First Peoples. For many, many thousands of years, education and care services have a shared responsibility to contribute to building better societies and sustainable environments that include our relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Through all of the work that we do, we are also obliged to challenge bias and stereotypes and find ways that we can use respectful relationships to build supportive relationships into the future where we value beliefs and value different ways of knowing the world. And hopefully by valuing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, we can make sure that all of our children feel very supported and welcome. And as Ron said, that every single child feels a great sense of belonging, including all of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, something that we could all pay attention to in our work. And of course, in the National Quality Standard, there is an invitation for us to engage in the framework, an expectation to engage with the framework. And of course, the updated framework now has a strong commitment to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. In fact, it is now a separate section. It's got a separate section of its own, and it's really important that that principle becomes part of our conversation. So as I said, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives is now a principle on its own, and there is an expectation that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives are incorporated by all educators into their philosophy and practice, and that we are all working together to know about Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories, knowledge systems, cultures, and languages. So for those of you who are feeling like this is a big leap for me, it is really important to say it might be just one of these ideas that you take today. And in your Connect, Extend, Challenge conversation, you might have said, there is something that I'm already doing. And also you might be thinking there's an idea that I could take, the stories that I have or some of the dolls that I have in my dramatic play space, some of the resources and materials that I have, I could take what I'm already doing and just stretch it out a little bit. And then some of you who might want to challenge is to say, I'm going to really plan to participate in NAIDOC Week in 2024. So you might want to put it in your quality improvement plan. You want to think about how you build those conversations and negotiations with your colleagues. So I know that some of this is a lot of information and you'll probably need a couple of days to sort of process it and think about where you might go. But the great thing here is that you can come back and revisit some of these ideas in the booklet, and you can go and have a look at some of the resources that we'll talk about as we've progressed, including the cultural framework that we heard Ron talk about. So, of course, one of the great things around PD in Your Pocket is that we get to hear a couple of interviews from people who add value to our conversation. And we have a second interview for you. And thank you for all those people who are hanging in there at the end of the day. It's great that you're able to join us. And we are very, very fortunate to have an interview here with Tracey Taylor, who's from a family daycare educator at Collective Family Daycare. And Tracey was absolutely a fantastic contributor to our PD in Your Pocket event here. She's very generous with her time, and she shared some thoughts and perspectives about some of the work that she's doing. And here's some examples of some of the things that she's been doing in her space, where lots of children have been engaged in thinking and learning about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in her context. And now it's time to hear from Tracey as she talks about what it's like as a family daycare educator directly working with these contexts and these spaces. Well, hello, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome our second guest to our PD in Your Pocket webinar, focusing on embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, Tracey Taylor from Collective Family Daycare. Hello, Tracey.
Hello, Catherine. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, and all the better for seeing you and having you part of our conversation. So maybe I can get you to start, Tracey, by just introducing yourself and your family daycare work.
Okay, so I'm actually situated on the central coast of New South Wales in the Darkinjung area. I first started family daycare around 15 years ago, and back then it was very, very different. It was mostly Anglo-Saxon. I had no Aboriginal children. I don't even think I had any child from any other country. It wasn't until Probably I did my diploma, I think it was about 10 or 11 years ago, where when we started the EYLF and NQS had just come in, and they just brought in Aboriginal studies in with that. So when we had to do it in the diploma, we had to think about, our own, ideas that we had. And I really had no ideas, because even when I went to school when I was younger, I had Aboriginal kids at my school and that, but when you're a kid, everyone's just friends and no one knows anything about anyone. We're just all playing. So it was very, very interesting doing Aboriginal studies. And then we had to make resources, and I was determined that I was going to make something that was actually authentic, not tokenistic, and to look at how we are today, Aboriginal people are today. They're not all painted. Some have blonde hair, some have white skin, some have red hair. And so what I did, I actually made some Russian dolls, the little ones that you put together, and I painted them. So one was in what you would think, the ceremonial painting, and then we had a white mum with blonde hair and a darker child, and then a middle child with red hair. And it was just so that the children could understand that, it's not about how you look, it's about what's inside. So that was a big thing, and it was just such a big learning curve.
Yeah,
and
sounds
very,
like it.
very interesting. Yeah.
And Tracey, you've got how many children in your family daycare service?
So I have 4 at the moment. And as I said, I didn't have any Aboriginal children back then, but I'm lucky enough to have one right now.
Wow.
And I'm so lucky because his mum is fantastic. I can ask her for anything. And I asked her for when we did reconciliation this year so I could make it more inclusive for him. And she actually made me a sheet. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's up here.
Oh, yeah.
About his country and his totem. And she was lovely enough to bring in a didgeridoo and a boomerang that belongs to the grandfather in the family.
Fantastic.
And he'd learnt to play it. So he sat down, and all the because I've got 3 other girls on that day, and they all sat down and watched him, and he played the didgeridoo, and just a look of pride on his face. It was just so unreal and so beautiful. And he, you could see the sense of belonging that he had.
Yeah.
And it was also learning for the girls as well, and they could see that their friend had a new skill.
Yeah.
And then he talked about the didgeridoo, and he talked about his totem and his boomerang. So obviously in his family, it's a part of their culture, and it's a part that they celebrate. And I was very lucky and very happy to do that here as well.
Yeah. And it sounds like that relationship with the families, and for family daycare educators out there, if they do have relationships with families who can share their cultural identity with them, that's an incredibly fortunate relationship to have. It sounds like they've been really open and sharing with you about that. But do you think it's because you're welcoming that family is sharing that information with you?
I think it's because I'm willing to have a go and just try. And I think that parents appreciate that, and they appreciate that and because there's only a small number in family daycare, which is what I actually love about family daycare, you can celebrate probably more so those things, because it's not that it's more special than in a bigger group, because I suppose in a bigger group it's just different. Yeah. And there's more of a relationship because there's less children, and the parents all get on. They come in and they say hello in the morning, and we'll have birthday parties or celebrations here, and the parents will know about it because the kids talk about it, because we talk about it beforehand, and it's in our program. And and one thing I was going to say too is that when I first did the training, I took the children to Walkabout Wildlife Park, which is probably about 40 minutes from me here, and it's owned by the Darkinjung people. Yep. And the actual the ranger there has a degree in teaching, but he's also an Aboriginal man. And so he went through ochre painting children, and he went through bush tucker or bush medicine, and taught them all about how to throw a boomerang, and and even right down to things like dangers in, how to look out for snakes and all different things, and it was so valuable for the children, such a educational thing. And so every year we've gone there and I've taken the children and we've had that, and they're always so happy to engage with the children and to help the children learn more about Aboriginals and about different tools that they used. And so, it's really interesting.
It's really interesting too, isn't it, that there are so many opportunities now in our local communities to work with and learn about country. Yeah. And it sounds like you're someone who looks out for opportunities too, Tracey. You're a bit of a learner. Would that be right?
I found Aboriginal learnings to do with the environment because they're so very close to the environment.
That connection to country.
Connection to country. And so you've got all the plants and everything, but we've been learning about Aboriginal sustainability, which has been great for the children because, and I know that we do sustainability anyway as part of the practice in the EYLF. So things like, you leave some of the plant behind, so you've got regrowth. You only take what you need. You respect your environment. They respect the animal that's their totem because they believe that it might be a reincarnation of one of their elders. So there's all these beliefs and this knowledge of plants, and it's so amazing. It is really good. And there's so many people out there. And then there's Yama to you. He's an Aboriginal man who sells Indigenous plants, Australian plants. And
I understand you have actually established a bush tucker garden. Is that right?
Yes, I have got a bush tucker garden. Yeah. It's great. We've got some saltdash and some redback ginger, some lily pilly, some mint, some wild basil, so many things. And we cook with it and we use it. The kids smell it. Everything in our garden they can eat. So there's nothing dangerous, and they can just walk up and they smell it, and it just smells beautiful anyway in the yard.
And I think you're reminding us there that it doesn't have to be something that happens just one day or 1 week. We've got opportunities to celebrate in, say, NAIDOC week, but something like a bush tucker garden or regular visits out into the community, engaging with community events, things like that can happen throughout the program, and using resources and continuing to learn means it's sort of throughout the program, not just a one-off. And I can see that behind you, you've got some really good resources. Are you also on the lookout for books and stories and resources that you think are,
Always. And there's actually one in particular that I think is really good, and I don't know if anyone in family daycare would like to get it, but it's this one called How to Indigenise Your Early Childhood Setting. It's actually got checklists in there of things that you can do, and it's written by Aboriginal people.
Yep.
It's produced by the first Aboriginal book company. Mm-hmm. So the money goes back to the community, to the people, to the people of the community, and it talks about respect and how you greet Aboriginal people when they come into your service like you would anyone else, but there might be certain things that you mightn't be aware of that actually makes it so much easier when you're greeting them, because you don't know everything, and as you say, you're constantly learning, and it's such an amazing thing to learn about, and they do things so many different ways.
And it sounds like you're also getting to know your local community too, and making sure that there's lots of opportunities. But if you are building those relationships with families, like you say, and children are coming to share some of those stories themselves, that's just such a powerful opportunity. Not everyone, of course, will be in a situation where they are working directly with an Aboriginal family, but it's about reaching out and seeing what's going on in your local community. One other thing that I think, Tracey, you might be able to help us with is that sometimes family daycare educators might be a little bit worried about maybe making a mistake or doing something that they shouldn't do. Have you got a sense of how you sort of navigated that? Have you been in a situation where you feel like, I shouldn't have done it like that?
Oh, every day. It's a constant learning. We're on this journey, as they say, towards cultural competence. Like, we're trying, and I think as long as you try, there's that sense that that Aboriginal people appreciate it, that you're actually having a go, you're trying to learn more about them, you're showing respect, but you're also there's a knowledge that you don't want to be lost. That's, thousands of years old, that, that sometimes is being lost because a lot of it is because for a time there you had, the lost generation and the stolen generation. And, at a course that we did, and this is another thing, your service, your coordination units, can be so helpful. Like, mine collective is fantastic. All of our educators actually made a panel for a quilt. Yeah. And then Dale, our leader, as I call her, she sewed it together. So we've actually got a massive big quilt that's made of all the different areas that all our family daycare educators are in. And it goes around from educator to educator, so the children get to actually see that. We actually had a lady, I wrote her name down, Elsie Randall, and she talked about the impact of colonisation on Aboriginal people. And it's amazing to see just what a change it's made to them, and how it's so important for us now, I think, to bring that all back, because we learn about different cultures throughout the world. So why shouldn't we learn about our own? We might have any Aboriginal ancestors, but we certainly live on the land, and it's their country, it's our country. So, we should appreciate that and learn more about it.
Well, and it sounds like engagement with elders as a collective too, as a group of educators coming together with your family daycare colleagues in your service more broadly, is a really, really good strategy to do. And it's great to take action too, Tracey, if that sort of action of coming together and doing something really productive and purposeful and positive that builds those relationships in a respectful way. Tracey, we're coming to the end of our conversation. We could probably talk all day, but it's fantastic to hear such practical ideas too, and building resources, learning, and you've clearly been doing this for a little while, learning over a period of time. Great to see that it started when you started your qualifications too. So that's a really good news for people who are thinking of upgrading their qualifications. That can be a place
of
a place of inspiration, can't it? So I wonder whether you can finish us off by just giving one piece of advice. So if you were working with or talking to a family daycare educator who wanted to know, like, where should I start, Tracey? What should I do? What do you think? What's one piece of advice?
I think Google. Google is your friend.
Yeah.
Investigate the local area you're from. Look up, there's programs from your local area. You can find community groups in your local area. There's men's sheds, there's women's groups, there's so many different things. There's youth groups. But use your best resource, which is your children and your families as well. Yeah. And just have a go. Like, you will make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Like, you don't know everything. But how can you positively teach children if you don't learn it yourself first? And do you want to really, like, I'm interested in the learning. So do you really want to teach children about something you're not interested in? Like, learn it yourself and then pass that knowledge on. And children are so happy. They're like little sponges. They're so happy to be engaged in anything that you do. And they take everything in. And I know they go back and talk to their parents about it because their parents come back and say stuff. Yeah. So that's the main thing, I think. Yeah. Just have a go.
Yeah. Fantastic messages here, Tracey, about learning and becoming a curious educator so that we can really generate curious children who ask big questions and they engage with all of the opportunities that engaging with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives brings us in family daycare. Thank you so much for sharing all of your story. I know that all of our participants who are joining us for PD in their pocket will absolutely appreciate hearing from a practitioner, from someone who does this on a daily basis. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And just remember, I'm a novice too. I'm just learning every day. So just have a go. That's all you can do.
I'm sure people are going to be inspired by that, Tracey. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
Well, isn't it fantastic to hear Tracey's conversation with us? It's such a really powerful thing to hear a family daycare practitioner telling us those stories. So big shout out to Tracey. Tracey, if you're joining us today, thank you so much for your contribution. And we hope that, all of you are inspired by Tracey's story. I just want to check out to see our chat and the conversations that have been happening in our chat. So just let me go and have a bit of a look at that. There's lots of different conversations that have been happening here, and lots of big thank yous for Tracey, which is fantastic. Lots of different comments as we've gone through, just in terms of thanking Tracey, and also thank yous to all of the sort of ideas that are happening as we're contributing. And I'm just scrolling through. There's like thousands of you online. So terrific to have you here. And I'll just shout out to our support in the background to see whether there's any other particular questions that are coming through. I might get Ethan to let us know if there's anything particularly, because there's lots and lots of comments coming through. But one thing that I wanted to finish off today by doing is to make sure that we think about the next step. So this is the time when you're starting to think about, well, what would I do now? What's my next strategy here? And it may be an idea that you heard from Tracey. It may be an idea that you heard from Ron. But here's a couple of suggestions that you might want to think about here. The book name, that's a really good thing to think about, and we'll track that down because I think some of you are asking that conversation, and also different things that you might share. So if you actually have that book, or you've got other books and resources that you really like, please let us know about that. So in first instance, start with getting to know your understanding in your local community. So your own understanding and your own perspectives is where you want to start. What do you know? What do you know about the community that you're part of? And I think it's a really incredibly important part of the journey and the place to start. So think about doing one thing that might be different from what you've already done. So it's no longer really an option to do nothing. What we want to do is think about doing something and have a go at that, and think about doing something in your space that helps us to extend the understanding for children around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. And this is not just waiting for you to meet an Aboriginal person who can help you, but also maybe thinking about getting inspiration from other colleagues and thinking about what's happening locally. I love the suggestions that are in the chat about going to your local library. Really good idea. I'm sure your local librarians will be able to think about this. And I can see that Nikki from New South Wales Family Daycare is online, and think about posting some things in the Facebook group and share some stories and ideas in that space as well. And I think that local connection is going to be really powerful. So think about where your local connections are. Perhaps as a group get together and say, well, wonder where they are, and can we think about planning some professional learning? You heard Tracey talk a little bit about some of the professional learning that you've organised, and organising excursions to art galleries, exactly as we've heard. We see a couple of people suggesting local art galleries, local councils, local Indigenous nurseries. There's all sorts of opportunities in that space. You might have an organisation locally you can reach out to. You also might make every effort to build some relationships with community members. So where can you go to join celebrations that are already part of your local community? So look what's going on in your local community, the local paper, the local Facebook groups, reconciliation groups in your local community. What's going on? Now, I know that some of you might feel a little bit anxious about getting out and about too much, but again, you might want to go with your colleagues. Perhaps a couple of family daycare educators might join together and go somewhere, or wait for something to happen in your local town so that you can, or your local community, where you can get something in your space. So think about those relationships. And of course, we want you to celebrate your successes. So make sure you put them in your quality improvement plan and say, that's the success, and it was really fantastic, and I want to celebrate my achievements, even if it's a small step that you've embedded. And those of you who are in support roles, it would be fantastic for you to make sure that our family daycare celebrates, our family daycare educators celebrate their successes. I also note that New South Wales TAFE, there's some really good resources there. So lots of fantastic insights and sharing ideas in that space. And of course, we know that lots of publications do emerge. So look out for new publications in those spaces. Some of them might be out of print. You know, if you look at some other colleagues, you might share some resources, but there's lots of new things emerging. So again, check out things that like Narragansett to find out extra resources. And here's a couple of other places you can go to get some more information. So absolutely go to the Narragansett site. So Narragansett, you can see it on the screen now. And I would encourage you to go and have a look at that because they've got heaps of resources and great videos you can watch, fantastic professional learning you can engage in. And of course, the Aboriginal Education Consultative Group in New South Wales, again, terrific resources. They will tell you about some terrific things. And this is one that's on the screen. The health activity booklets, fantastic resources. And I know that Munch and Move locally in New South Wales has a number of resources that in some local communities that have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in them. So look out for some of the things that might be in that community. And again, people who are in leading roles in family daycare might want to draw attention to that in their family daycare teams. The other things, of course, is to look out for all of the work that Ron talked about. And there's some great resources on the New South Wales Education Department website about embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into your early childhood settings. Lots of really great material there. And of course, SNAKE, the Secretariat for the National Aboriginal and Islander Childcare. It would be fantastic to go and have a look there. Some really terrific resources, great things that you can use and readily experience what you might take into your family daycare context. And there's some terrific links that are being posted in the chat by the team there. So thank you so much for that. And of course, your next steps is to continue your learning. So you heard it from Tracey, you heard it from Ron, and you can hear it from me. We're all saying, just continue your learning, take little tiny steps. Do something to try and sort of stretch your thinking a little bit further, be inspired by Tracey's story and think about the next steps. You can always check out the CEQA website. There's ongoing information here and there's some great stories. There's one from Bundaberg Family Daycare who received an excellent rating. This is something that you want me to have a look at in terms of the way that they are engaging in that space. And of course, continuing to learn from each other through New South Wales Family Daycare. Check out the resources also about reconciliation on the CEQA website. So lots of different information. I know at this time probably you're thinking, gosh, lots of different ways to do this, but our invitation today for you is to choose one idea, just one idea that you want to take forward and think about how you might embed that. And every time we do that, outcomes for all children, and in particular Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, are improved. And that's, of course, why we're here, why we've committed ourselves to working with young children, because we want to make sure that children grow up feeling strong and confident about themselves. And in particular, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children feel strong and proud about who they are, and our job is to support children and families in that task. So thank you so much for your participation today, and we know that by undertaking all of that work, all children will benefit and that we will have a stronger and more reconciled future. Keep thinking about those things, ask some questions as we progress. We'll stay on the line here for a little bit longer in terms of asking any questions, but thank you so much everybody for your participation tonight. And we do appreciate that this is something that I know many of you really want to get stronger in. And congratulations for all of your work. And we look forward to hearing fantastic stories of all of the work that you've been doing. So thank you very much, everybody, and good evening.